the West Coast terminal of the global supply chain. Earns $5 billion annually. Episode 24, Nampo Waudo Export Processing Zone. Gateway to the Pyongyang-Nampo Economic Corridor. Creating the miracle on the Taedong River. North Korea's Workers' Party can do a market economy. The Nampo Waudo Export Processing Zone is capable of handling a port cargo volume of 15 million TEU and generating over $5 billion in annual revenue once the new Nampo Outer Port is constructed and the Pyongyang-Nampo Economic Corridor is completed, following denuclearization and the introduction of a market economy. The Nampo Waudo Export Processing Zone is an economic development zone specialized for export processing, designated in the Waudo area of Nampo City, South Pyongan Province. Established during the large-scale designation of provincial-level economic development zones by North Korea in 2013-2014, its purpose is to focus on developing export-oriented processing and assembly industries, leveraging its geographical advantage of being adjacent to Nampo Port. Since it encompasses the Pyongyang-Nampo region, North Korea's largest industrial and population hub, it is the area with the highest potential to grow into a logistics and manufacturing hub for the West Coast industrial belt after denuclearization. Spanning approximately 1.8 square kilometers, its proximity to Nampo Port and the West Sea Lock facilitates maritime transportation. It is connected to Pyongyang by an expressway, so there is active exchange of people and goods. With the enactment of North Korea's Economic Development Zone Law in 2013, 3 export processing zones were designated in the Nampo area, either simultaneously or sequentially. The goal is to develop the Waudo Export Processing Zone into an export-oriented processing and assembly complex, as well as a comprehensive economic development zone encompassing finance, tourism, real estate, and food processing. The Jindo Export Processing Zone is a bonded processing trade complex that produces and exports machinery, electrical and electronic goods, light industry products, and chemical products. The plan for the Songnim Export Processing Zone is to develop it into an export processing, warehousing, and cargo transportation complex. Among these, the Jindo Export Processing Zone is a key hub granted central-level status, and it is structured to operate in functional integration with the Waudo Export Processing Zone within virtually the same region. It shares cargo handling facilities and storage warehouses with Nampo Port and operates in conjunction with the nearby Jindo Export Processing Zone. As of 2026, small-scale consignment processing trade with China and the production of light industrial products are primarily taking place. However, large-scale facility investment remains stagnant due to sanctions against North Korea. The facility is structured to utilize a skilled workforce immediately, thanks to an abundance of technical personnel in the metal, machinery, glass, and shipbuilding industries, such as Chalama Steelworks. Nampo Port is North Korea's largest trading port, handling 28.9% of the country's external maritime trade cargo. It is equipped with facilities across 8 piers, with an annual handling capacity of 7.5 million tons, and primarily deals with coal, cement, and general merchandise. Construction of a dedicated container pier began in April 2002 and was completed in 2005. Although a modernization project for Nampo Port was pursued in cooperation with South Korea, it was ultimately abandoned due to the deterioration of inter-Korean relations. Construction of the Seohae Lock began in May 1981 and was completed in June 1986. The embankment connecting Jinampo and Paido in Yunril County, Hwanghae Province, is 8 km long and features 3 lock chambers and 36 sluice gates. It serves multiple functions, including raising the water level of the Taedong River to increase the vessel capacity of Nampo Port from 20,000 to 50,000 tons, supplying agricultural water to the West Coast tidal flats, securing industrial water for the Nampo Industrial Complex, and flood control. However, the Seohae Lock is also simultaneously the greatest weakness of Nampo Port. The very fact that it is a lock port restricts passage capacity, but with the addition of land transportation functions to the lock, the time available for vessels to pass has been cut in half. Since the construction of the Seohae Lock, water flow has stagnated, causing the sea at Nampo Port to freeze for approximately 80 days every year. To strengthen port functions, it would be far more efficient to construct a massive outer harbor along the coast and dredge the seabed. Therefore, the most important infrastructure decision regarding the development of Nampo Port after denuclearization is whether to maintain the West Sea Lock system or construct a new outer harbor. Expansion work is continuing at the shipyard capable of building warships at Nampo Port. 4 oil tanks have been completed, and groundwork is underway for the installation of 2 additional tanks. North Korean state media reported in December 2024 that new warships, such as destroyers or frigates, are being built in Nampo. This trend in the expansion of military facilities suggests that the separation of Nampo's military and commercial port functions will be a key agenda item in denuclearization negotiations. In the mid to late 1990s, the Daewoo Group operated a garment factory in the Nampo Industrial Complex. Launched in 1992, 8 years before the Kaesong Industrial Complex, this project closed in 1998 due to Daewoo's financial difficulties, but it holds historical significance as the first tangible example of inter-Korean manufacturing cooperation. Pyongyang Motors is an automobile assembly plant located in Nampo, established in 2002 as a joint venture between the Unification Church and North Korea, and produces passenger cars. Although on a small scale, it possesses a local workforce with experience in manufacturing finished vehicles from importing parts to assembly and domestic sales. Although the Nampo Waudo Export Processing Zone held briefings to attract foreign investment around 2014, shortly after its designation, virtually no substantial large-scale development took place due to international sanctions and a lack of infrastructure. While Nampo Port continues to function as a major port on North Korea's west coast, no specific foreign investment projects or instances of large-scale factory construction have been confirmed in the Waudo area. Activities are primarily composed of small-scale processing activities centered on domestic companies and trade with China via Nampo Port. Foreign direct investment is almost non-existent, consisting mainly of small-scale Chinese merchants and processing activities. Although the Waudo Export Processing Zone clearly intended to utilize Nampo's port infrastructure, it was given a lower development priority compared to Rason or Sinuiju, and is evaluated as the economic development zone with the poorest performance. If UN sanctions are eased or lifted following denuclearization, and North Korea pursues a Chinese-style gradual opening by implementing mixed ownership, fostering chaebols, expanding private property rights, and strengthening special laws for special zones, the Nampo Waudo Export Processing Zone is expected to grow significantly as a logistics and processing hub on the West Coast. Nampo Port is the largest port on the West Coast and possesses significant geographical advantages due to its proximity to China's Shandong and Liaoning provinces. In the short term, 1 to 3 years, rapid operation will be possible through the modernization of Nampo Port and the establishment of a light industry OEM cluster led by Chinese capital, focusing on labor-intensive export processing such as clothing, sewing, footwear, and electronic component assembly. In the intermediate period, 3 to 7 years, the full-scale operation of the specialized export processing complex will lead to the expansion of large-scale processing industrial complexes linked to the Chinese supply chain for fabrics and components. In the long term, it will become a key hub of the West Coast economic belt linked to the Nampo-Pyongyang axis, upgrading to high-value processing such as electronics and automotive parts, and developing into a comprehensive export base involving capital from South Korea, China, and Russia. Following denuclearization, the Waudo Export Processing Zone is expected to become the West Coast terminal of the global supply chain. If denuclearization progresses and investment from the international community is permitted, Nampo Waudo will transform into an export-oriented complex industrial park. Investments in advanced assembly and manufacturing will serve as a low-cost West Coast production base for South Korean and global conglomerates, including the assembly of home appliances, automotive parts, and telecommunications equipment. Investments in international logistics and distribution will establish a logistics hub for imports and exports to China and the Pyongyang metropolitan area, encompassing warehousing, packaging, and cold chain logistics. Financial and business investments will establish a West Coast financial hub supporting corporate activities within the special zone, including banks, insurance companies, and legal service centers. Investments in smart agri-fishery processing will create a base for exporting high-value-added foods to China and other overseas markets, utilizing processed seafood from the West Sea and surrounding agricultural products. China will emphasize connectivity with cities near the Bohai Bay, such as Dalian and Tianjin, focusing on logistics and processing, and aims to secure port operating rights and preempt the warehousing and logistics industries. In particular, Chinese capital is expected to seek strong dominance in the assembly and contract manufacturing sectors. Korea is pursuing the establishment of a West Coast Joint Economic Zone, connecting the Gyeonggi-Incheon Industrial Complex with Nampo through the integration of manufacturing and supply chains. It is highly likely that suppliers to major conglomerates like Samsung and Hyundai Motor will enter the market in large numbers to lower production costs, thereby competing with Chinese capital. The entry of Hong Kong and Singapore into the financial and transit trade sectors is also anticipated. Capital from Hong Kong, which has previously expressed an intention to invest, is expected to enter by leveraging its expertise in establishing financial systems within the special zone and providing transit trade services. Let us examine the competitive landscape among participants by industrial investment category in the Nampo Waudo export processing zone following denuclearization. The key competitive point is whether the products are recognized as originating in South Korea. If products manufactured in Nampo are recognized as South Korean, tariff benefits from both the Korea-US FTA and the Korea-EU FTA apply simultaneously, providing a decisive price advantage over Bangladesh and Vietnam. This is the electronic component assembly and EMS contract manufacturing business. Current participants currently, there are none. It is completely blocked due to sanctions. Competitive entrants after denuclearization. These include component outsourcing by South Korea's Samsung Electronics, LG Innotek, and Samsung Electromechanics EMS, by Taiwan's Foxconn and ASE Group, and electronic components from Japan's Murata, TDK, and Yamaha Motor affiliates. Competitive landscape. The Jindo Export Processing Zone is officially designated as a bonded processing trade complex for the production and export of machinery, electrical, electronic, light industry, and chemical products, and thus already possesses a legal framework optimized for electronic component EMS. Its core function is the West Sea Gateway, enabling immediate exports to China, Japan, and South Korea via the Nampo Port container terminal, while leveraging the science and engineering workforce in Pyongyang, which overlaps with the talent pool of the Eunjong IT Special Zone. A sequence is expected in which South Korean electronic component companies enter as leading investors, followed by Japanese and Taiwanese companies entering in competition. Automotive parts and assembly business. Current participants, Pyonghwa Motors is currently engaged in small-scale assembly. Competitors entering the market. After denuclearization, these include parts suppliers for South Korea's Hyundai and Kia, electric vehicle parts for China's BYD and Geely, and automotive parts for Germany's Bosch and Continental. Competitive landscape. The most natural path to upgrade is to convert into an electric vehicle parts assembly complex by leveraging Pyonghwa Motors' site and experience. As South Korea's Hyundai and Kia transition to electric vehicles, their suppliers are seeking to diversify their production bases, and Nampo offers excellent speed in supplying parts to Incheon Port, which is 180 nautical miles away via direct shipping across the West Sea. While China's BYD will be the most active in exploring the Nampo electric vehicle factory, a monopoly will not be permitted due to U.S. regulations on Chinese electric vehicles and North Korea's multipolar strategy. Port Modernization and Logistics Service Project. Current participants. The North Korean maritime authorities are operating the facility independently and maintaining intermittent maritime trade with China even under sanctions. Post-denuclearization competitors. These include South Korea's HMM, Hyundai Glovis, and SM Line China's COSCO immediate restoration of the Dalian-Nampo route, Singapore's PSA international port operations, and Germany's Hamburg Süd. Competitive landscape. The modernization of Nampo Port is an agenda item that the South Korean government previously pursued during the Roh Moo-hyun administration, but ultimately failed to complete. It is expected to be one of the first inter-Korean economic cooperation projects to be resumed by the South Korean government following denuclearization. However, the most critical initial investment decision is the construction of an outer harbor to resolve the structural limitations of the West Sea Lock, such as freezing for 80 days a year and restricted passage capacity. Global port operators like PSA and DP World are expected to pursue large-scale investments through packages that include the construction of the outer harbor and long-term operating rights. Food processing and fisheries business. Current participants. The Nampo Fisheries Business Office and the Nampo Fisheries Processing Plant are currently operating independently, but production is on a small scale under sanctions. Competitive entrants after denuclearization. South Korean companies such as CJ Cheiljedang, Daesang, and Dongwon Group Chinese seafood processing companies and Japanese fisheries companies. Competitive landscape food processing is included in the official plan for the Waudo Export Processing Zone, utilizing existing infrastructure such as the Waudo Cooperative Farm and the Nampo Fisheries Processing Plant. A model for processing fishery resources from the West Sea and the Taedong River and exporting them to South Korea, Japan, and China is immediately feasible. CJ Cheiljedang is the most active candidate for establishing a joint processing plant utilizing Korean wave food brands. Real estate and urban development projects. Current participants. Some leisure infrastructure such as Waudo Beach and Waudo Resort already exists. Competitors to enter after denuclearization. These include South Korea's Hyundai ENC, GS ENC, and POSCO ENC, China's Vanke and Country Garden, and Singapore's Keppel Land. Competitive landscape. Along with the growth of the Pyongyang-Nampo Economic Corridor, Nampo is highly likely to be developed into a mixed-use new city encompassing residential, commercial, and logistics facilities. It is probable that the site adjacent to Waudo Beach will be developed into a tourism, leisure, and hotel complex, while the area around the export processing zone will be developed into a residential district supporting industrial complexes. South Korean construction companies hold an overwhelming advantage in technology and design, while Chinese real estate firms compete based on their financial strength. North Korea offers various investment incentives. The core incentive is exclusive access to the West Sea Export Gateway. It leverages the geographical exclusivity of being the shortest distance export port in the West Sea, connecting to Dalian, China, Incheon, and Pyeongtaek, South Korea, and ports on Japan's west coast. Specific companies are granted priority usage rights for the container terminal at Nampo Port and dedicated warehouses within bonded zones. The Pyongyang Labor Pool Package establishes a system that utilizes Pyongyang's population of 5 million as a supporting labor market. It guarantees a monthly wage of $100 to $150 and the placement of necessary personnel within 2 weeks. The tax incentive package offers a 15-year corporate tax exemption within the export processing zone, a 0% tariff on finished product exports, duty-free imports of raw materials, and the liberalization of dividend remittances. Regarding the commitment to upfront investment in power and infrastructure, the improvement of Nampo's power infrastructure by South Korean capital, specifically the connection of LNG power plants or submarine cables, is included in the compensation package for the initial phase of denuclearization, thereby guaranteeing a stable power supply to investors in advance. As a bargaining chip for the recognition of origin, special provisions recognizing products manufactured in Nampo as originating from South Korea are included in trade negotiations between South Korea and the U.S., as well as between South Korea and the EU. If realized, Nampo would be able to export to the U.S. market at a tariff rate more than 100 percentage points lower than that of China, overwhelming all competing alternatives. It is also necessary to devise strategies that pursue the best interests for North Korea. Principle 1. Set the issue of the West Sea Lock as the first technical agenda item at the negotiation table. The structural limitations of the West Sea Lock are the biggest bottleneck that diminishes the potential of Nampo Port. The top priority is to secure funding from South Korea and the international community early in the denuclearization agreement process for the construction of a new outer port or the improvement of the West Sea Lock as part of an economic assistance package. If the costs for the new outer port are raised from the South Korean government or international development financial institutions, ADB, AIIB, World Bank, North Korea can expand its port capacity 2 to 3 times at virtually no cost. Principle 2. Differentiate the positioning of the project as the Jindo EMS Complex rather than Kaesong Industrial Complex 2.0. While the Kaesong Industrial Complex was dependent on South Korean SMEs and focused on low-value-added garment manufacturing, the Nampo Jindo Export Processing Zone must target mid-value-added manufacturing sectors such as electronic components, automotive parts, and EMS from the outset. This can attract the interest of not only Korean but also Taiwanese, Japanese, and global EMS companies, thereby securing opportunities for investment diversification and technology absorption simultaneously. Principle 3. Secure the confidence of Western investors through the explicit separation of military and commercial ports. Currently, warship construction and military facility building are intermingled with commercial container facilities at Nampo Port. Following the denuclearization agreement, clearly separating the military port zone from the commercial and export processing zones physically and legally, and accepting international audits and verifications of the commercial zone, is the most effective confidence-building measure to accelerate investment decisions by Western companies. Principle 4. Utilize the Incheon-Nampo shipping route as the number 1 symbolic project of inter-Korean economic cooperation. The sea distance from Incheon Port to Nampo Port is approximately 180 nautical miles, allowing for a round trip in 18 to 24 hours. Declaring the opening of a regular Incheon-Nampo car ferry route immediately after the denuclearization agreement would make it the most tangible. Number 1. Symbolic project of inter-Korean economic cooperation, enabling cargo transport, business travel, and tourism simultaneously. This is the fastest way to create a psychological turning point for post-denuclearization inter-Korean economic cooperation, alongside the reopening of the Kaesong Industrial Complex. Principle 5. Develop and market the Pyongyang-Nampo Economic Corridor as a single economic zone. Package Pyongyang's workforce, technical personnel, and consumer market with Nampo's export port and manufacturing bases into a single economic corridor and market it to foreign investors. By bundling the triangular ecosystem connecting IT personnel in the Yunjong High-Tech Development Zone in Pyongyang, manufacturing bases in the Jindo Export Processing Zone in Nampo, and the Nampo Port Export Gateway into the Pyongyang-Nampo Economic Corridor investment package, we provide one-stop investment attraction through a single window. Principle 6. Demand that the international community resolve the power supply issue as a prerequisite. Unlike Chongjin and Rasan, Nampo is adjacent to Pyongyang and can share the Pyongyang power grid. However, stable power supply for large-scale manufacturing requires separate investment. Specifying an LNG combined cycle power plant as a core item of economic compensation in the initial stages of denuclearization and procuring it from South Korea's KEPCO and GS Energy is the fastest solution. This is the potential revenue outlook for the Nampo Waudo processing zone following denuclearization. Under a conservative scenario, within 5 years of denuclearization, 100 export processing companies specializing in textiles and electronic components could move in, and with an annual port cargo volume of 1 million TEU, annual foreign currency revenue of $500 to $800 million is possible. Under a baseline scenario, within 10 years, the formation of a complex ecosystem encompassing EMS, automotive parts, and food processing is possible, along with a port cargo volume of 5 million TEU and annual foreign currency revenue of $2 to $3 billion. Under an optimistic scenario, the construction of a new outer port, the completion of the Pyongyang-Nampo Economic Corridor, the establishment of Asian production bases by Western global companies, a port cargo volume of 15 million TEU, and annual foreign currency revenue exceeding 5 billion are possible. Nampo's greatest strength, unlike other North Korean special economic zones, lies in the existence of already operational port infrastructure, a historical industrial base, and the massive hinterland market and workforce pool of Pyongyang. Positioned between the symbolic significance of the immediate resumption of operations at the Kaesong Industrial Complex and Rasen's long-term potential as a logistics hub, Nampo is the central axis of North Korea's West Sea economy, capable of providing the most balanced return on investment over a period of 5 to 15 years. Nampo Waudo is like the lifeline leading to Pyongyang, the heart of the North Korean economy. If this area is successfully opened, it will serve as a decisive turning point in transforming North Korea's entire industrial structure from resource exports to high-value-added processing exports. Next time, we will talk about the Gyeongdo-Haeju Economic Corridor. Thank you.